super baking hot day here in Chaos Cottage. I am on Labrador duty. My little puppy, well, he's not really, he's an elderly old man, is down here. And I might have to get up and let him out so he can go and have a little swim in the stream and a drink, because it's quite hot for him too. So, without any further ado, what I'd like to do is get started with this webinar. Latecomers can miss out on the good bits. We looked at hundreds and hundreds of websites in the health tech and life sciences sector. Out of the 438 that we identified at the start, we down selected to the top 100 using some rigorous data and analytics, and this webinar is subsetting the top 20 and talking about what the top 20 do. We're coming at this from more than 2 decades of experience and building lots and lots of websites and lots of marketing activity for health tech pioneers and other ambitious B2B tech companies. So that's my experience, and also the experience of Sean, who wrote the report and prepared this webinar for me. So thank you, Sean. One small pitch: if you find any of this interesting, thought-provoking, revelatory, please feel free to book up a session with me to discuss it. We can explore your marketing, your website, your positioning, and you will definitely come away with some fresh ideas and some fresh thinking. Yeah, so let's get to it. So in looking at these 100 top websites and preparing the full report, which you can download here, you can download from our website. When I say download here, we'll send you a copy of the PDF with this hyperlink, and you can it'll take you to the landing page to download the full analysis. We looked at data about domain authority, traffic, SEO keywords, backlink profiles, sort of basically online reach and reputation and visibility. We did an analysis of the language, the messaging, the tone of voice on the website. Also a visual brand analysis of the kinds of colors, design, layout, typography used. We looked at the loading speed performances of the site, and we also assessed readability, sentiment, and word counts or content depth. So this was a fairly comprehensive, data-driven, and then subsequently expert, subjective human review of these websites. And I think we've identified some interesting trends and learnings from all of this. So this is the top 20. We make no observation about what these businesses do. We're just looking at their websites and the data that I mentioned. The interesting thing here is some of the large companies like Pfizer at number 1 earn their place not because at all because of the domain authority, but because they genuinely have a very strong verbal identity. And we thought that that writing strength, that positioning, that messaging was really, really attractive and interesting. And then there are some companies here, Flow, ZocDoc, Ada, highlighted in the slide, that are relatively new businesses. They are not, decades or hundreds of years old established industry presences, and yet they have reached the top 20 through deliberate design, clear messaging, and a user-first content strategy. And that's really the opportunity that every challenger brand has, and every ambitious growth stage business in this sector has. It's all to play for. So, what are the patterns that identify or align with these top 20 health tech life sciences websites? Well, the first thing that we saw consistently was a clear, consistent and strong and distinctive tone of voice. Lots of companies did this, but it's interesting in this sector that companies like Lilly, like Pfizer, are balancing empathy with expertise. There's not just a strong scientific or a sort of technical or medical perspective. There's also some human empathy that's going on. The majority, however, shift quite a lot. So the top 100 and certainly the top 400, there's a real mix and discontinuity on their sites. And I think this is a really interesting thing. It's an opportunity for companies to do better. And if you're entering into this sector, things like readability and tone of voice make a huge difference to how the website is perceived. And this is validated and there's data behind it, most notably the Norman Nielsen Group. Our Sitebulb data shows that 60 to 80% of websites in our sample pool were difficult or very difficult to read. So the majority of content on the majority of these sites, not that approachable. And I think that's the biggest opportunity, is just write your copy to be concise, scannable, factual, and a little bit human and empathetic. Second pattern that we saw is visual identity. And there's a really strong tendency towards this sort of blue, safe, sort of scientific, medical, blue palettes and people in white coats. This is typically how they want to, they look at other sites and they think, well, this is what we ought to be. There are some really notable exceptions, and I think this is an opportunity for people who want to stand out and differentiate. If you see all the elephants going that way, go the other way. Flow, for example, uses soft pinks and purples. ZocDoc has bright blues and a functional search-led homepage. Ada's illustration style is across all of their stuff, and it's more sort of approachable than a more sort of photographic, stock photography, medical context type of stuff. And GSK actually also, we picked them, highlighted them because they have some very interesting colors. They have lifestyle imagery, the contemporary typography, and warm oranges, which is a nice change from, probably 60-70% perhaps of the websites using this sort of medical blue, healthcare blue. So looking to be distinctive in color, imagery choice, design, typography is also a way of either staying semi-anonymous in the crowd, which some companies want to do. They want to look like bigger or peer competitors, or very clear routes to being different and differentiated, which in our view is what you should be aiming for with marketing. The second part of this visual identity is not only to decide where you sit in the herd or with the lions, as it were, but also applying whatever your choice is in a consistent way. So if you are, and we saw this with some of the sort of lower tier websites, there's inconsistency between pages, and there's inconsistency of imagery or of typography or of layout. And although the small thing, the changes and the differences and the sort of shortfalls are individually typically quite small, the cumulative effect erodes trust. And particularly in life sciences, in health technology websites, trust is the fundamental thing that you're aiming to build, whether it's with practitioners, healthcare practitioners, or with patients or whatever. It's true for all marketing, by the way. Trust is critical, but particularly in this sector. So consistency of the implementation, as well as, ideally differentiation in the visual identity. The third thing is that they write content for real users, and sometimes this is B2P patient focus, sometimes it's B2B, but it's aimed at particular user groups or audiences. And this is an area where ambitious growth companies like some of the ones that we've mentioned, Flow and Ada particularly, were called out in our analysis, where they can actually use their create content that helps them get found by SEO and increasingly in AI search, helps users when they arrive on the site to find interesting, relevant, and useful information. Lots of social proof and lots of well-structured navigation. And typically these sites are doing to patient and to practitioner to clinician communications, and managing that navigation split is also really important. We found quite a lot of pages on our top 100 that had fewer than 50 words, thin content, where blogs were buried in the footer, very fragmented content hubs, typically organized by date rather than user intent or user requirements. These are common problems across all the marketing that we, sites that we look at, but particularly again in this sector. And clearly, brands that invest in accessible, easy to navigate, comprehensive, user-focused content immediately differentiate themselves and also start building that SEO and AI search equity. So pattern number 4, navigation. It's really easy to design your site navigation to please the bosses, right? This needs to be on the menu, that needs to be on the menu. We need a super menu that has this thing. We need to support careers and this thing and that thing. And you end up with these very fat navigation footers. You get very complicated multi-tiered, multi-level menus, super menus and all this sort of thing. And for example, LabCorp has a 2-tier menu and separate burger navigation. So it's just like extra cognitive load. Similarly, AstraZeneca has quite a complicated menu with sort of section titles and that aren't necessarily very helpful. The flip side is there are some sites that are experimenting with some very sort of lean navigation. ZocDoc's homepage is just the search bar. It's fantastic. We're used to, or increasingly used to, having these sort of AI conversations. So it's not just a search box, but I want to know about this, or how do you do that? And companies that really carefully manage that split between patients, clinicians, and potentially other audience groups and help them navigate to the right content for them. That is really, really important in this sector. We see some sites, and probably best not to name names, where they have very complicated top-level domain strategies. So they might have a .com, a .co.uk, and then they might have .com/UK or something. So where you get larger and larger businesses, particularly with an international, multinational presence, or you get a business where maybe there's a split between the corporate site and the customer or marketing site, that architecture needs to be really carefully thought through as well. And it's very easy to make a mistake that just erodes SEO and makes navigation on the site a complete nightmare, because there's just multiple sites with multiple menus on them. So for some companies, especially the larger ones, this is a really critical part of navigation. The next thing we noticed is large companies, larger ones in our sample pool, consistently had slower websites and worse performance on mobile. Big imagery that takes too long and so on. And not only is this bad for users, bad for conversion rates, bad for SEO, it's also bad for the planet. Like, the more you have to send over the internet for each page, especially if you're a big site and you're getting hundreds of thousands of visitors, it's just not efficient. It's just not energy efficient. And I think they just have this privilege because they've got these domain names and they've got these sites that people are coming to, so they don't really need to worry about it. But loading speed, as evidenced by Lighthouse, Google Page Speed Insights, those sorts of tools, is really, really important. And our view is that an 80 minimum score on Page Speed Insights is the bare minimum. It's a sort of table stakes, forgetting about the SEO benefits just to make it usable for your end users. So something to focus on. Interestingly, we also found that most of these sites, all of them in the top 20, had some technical defects when it came to SEO, technical on-site, on-page SEO. Now, it's hard work and it's an ongoing battle to get this right. And, we spend a lot of time at Articulate doing it for ourselves and our clients. And, literally perfect is always a receding mirage. But things like generic CTAs where the text says read more, thin pages that don't have content for SEO tools to index and bite down on it, poor internal linking and multiple 301 layers is something we're really working hard on at Articulate right now. So 301 redirects. More modern sites like Abbott and Ada have cleaner metadata, more structured content hubs, more stronger signals about the content, more XML schema code. And it's probably because they have to try harder. It's a similar issue to the privilege of large established companies not having to worry about page speed. But if you care about SEO and AI search, this is something that you can control and something that, if you pay attention to, will yield a benefit. The seventh and final pattern is one that ties all of it together. And this is something around balancing scientific rigor, depth of technical information, for want of a better word, with human simplicity and approachability. And in our view, the top 20 websites all have something important in common. They explain the science, they explain the underlying knowledge and expertise that they're communicating, but they do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm users. They have structured copy, they have a clear message hierarchy, they use varied sentence lengths to create momentum, they have more readable text, they break content into digestible, scannable sections. These are the attributes of a company that wants to communicate rather than lecture, somebody that wants to excite and engage rather than overwhelm and bore people. It is really hard to do generally. I've always said just because you can write doesn't mean you're a writer, and there's a corollary to that. Just because ChatGPT or Claude generates plausible looking copy doesn't mean it's good copy. It's really important to bring that expertise and that focus on the quality of writing so that you can communicate clearly. And we see this repeatedly with opportunities that we explore with people. Significant investments in design, branding, technical hosting, SEO, right? Happy to spend money on that. Copywriting, we'll do it. It's a bit like going to a hospital and spending, paying a lot of attention to things like the equipment and stuff, but going, I don't really need to see a specialist. I'll just see the janitor. He'll diagnose me, right? Copy is the thing that people come to the website for. If you're looking at the pictures, you're missing the point. So they should have at least an equal weight and investment. And I think companies that communicate clearly and well and write well on their website do better, score better, certainly in our reports. So here are 3 things you can learn right now, some things that you can just focus on, that you can start working on like this week. Sharpening your verbal identity. So making sure that it is consistent, differentiated and clear. You can do a test, you can get a friend, you can read it out loud yourself, you can get one of the AI tools to read your text to you. And if it sounds like 5 different companies wrote it, you're inconsistent. If it sounds like something that could have been written by any of your competitors or any other businesses in your sector, that's a differentiation problem. If it sounds human, clear, well written, engaging, distinctive, fantastic. Let's move on to the next slide. Second thing, you can go test this. If you can, for example, ask someone who's never seen your website or hasn't seen it recently, or someone outside the organization, to go and find something on the website. Go find the blog, or go find the answer to this question, or you imagine you are a clinician practice manager and you want to find out about whether this thing can solve this problem. Go look at it. And if they can't answer or find the answer to that question in 5 seconds, even if it's not the answer, but if they can't get to the right page or follow the right route, it probably means your information architecture and your sitemap, your navigation isn't good enough, or your CTAs aren't clear enough. So thinking about that and making sure that everybody can find the right thing, that's the secret. And you can test this objectively. There are also companies that you can go pay to have 100 people do that test of you're this sort of person, go find this information. You can watch them struggle to find stuff. It can be quite humiliating sometimes. So the third thing that you can go do right now is go run Google Page Speed Insights. Just Google that and see how your homepage does. If you're below 50 on mobile, probably need to go do something about it fairly quickly. Site speed is people intuit it very quickly if the site loads slowly, especially if they're trying to load on a mobile device where they might have a not broadband type connection, a 4G or a 5G connection. Typically the root cause for this is legacy code bases, but sometimes it's just people uploading gigantic images or too many tracking cookies, pixels, that sort of thing. Quite often we will deliver a website that has a page weight of 500, 700 kilobytes, and then somebody at the client side will drop in a 4 megabyte graphic file. So all the work we've done on optimizing the code and compressing and minifying and whatever, like that atomic bomb of a giant JPEG on top of it. So this is worth testing. All of these things can be evaluated at scale across the whole site, and it's the sort of thing that we do when we're looking at a website and when we're having a discussion with a prospect or a client. But these tests you can go do yourself right now. Don't wait. You don't have to pay a bunch of money or have an expert do it. You can just go and sample it. So these are 3 things I'm recommending. Let's go and pick up some things that maybe you might look at next week to spend a little bit more time on. So a thorough page speed audit, maybe picking some blog posts, some product pages, if you want to get really sophisticated about it, using something like Sitebulb to scan a whole site, getting some proper metrics. There are lots of good tools about this, but doing a kind of comprehensive site audit would be a really good idea. Paying some more attention to tone of voice, printing out pages, going and looking at them, running by competitors. One of the things that we're experimenting now is taking our persona documentation, our ideal client profile documentation, our tone of voice guidelines. You'd expect us to have all that stuff pretty pinned down, and to a certain extent we do, certainly on the language and writing style. Building that into a Claude project and then saying to Claude, go review these 20 pages on the website. If you haven't got all that stuff documented, if you can't go to your intranet and pull down a tone of voice guideline that looks like 15 to 20 pages with before and after examples and a very specific corporate style guide, you haven't got tone of voice. You've got probably somebody's 1-page idea of tone of voice at the back of a brand Bible where they've got 10 pages of how not to abuse the logo. That isn't tone of voice guidelines, right? So if you haven't got that, the Claude AI thing isn't going to work for you. Human editing isn't going to work for you. So this is something that I would go and explore. So the acid test is, have you got that stuff? Right. A CTA audit, going across all the pages on the site and making sure that all the call to action buttons are distinctive and clear and meaningful and inviting. And any pop-up CTAs or hello bars or something are also clear and meaningful and inviting. If you see read more, learn more, not only is that an accessibility fail and an SEO fail, but actually it's also just a bit boring and basic. Lastly, or penultimately, I should say, see how long it takes you to find the blog on the website. And when you get there, see what the format is. If your format for your blog, for your resources hub, your content hub is, here's the 10 most recent articles we published, and there's no filtering and there's no categorization, and it's not the best content or the most useful content for this use case or this kind of persona, that's probably a sign you need to re-architect that. The best resources hubs mix different types of content and they answer specific questions or needs or challenges, or they talk to specific people. So you can come into them and go, look, I am this kind of person and I want this kind of information, and it should give you the best content on the site, whether it's a blog, a podcast, a webinar, a white paper. It should all be there and it should all be findable, not because it's the order in which you published it, but because that's the best stuff and it's been curated for the reader. Last thing, go find a friendly stranger and say, here's our homepage. Tell us what we do. In 10 seconds, that's a really interesting test. You can go find companies on the website that will do this, at some scale. I'm carrying the scars a little bit for this because we endlessly debate what should be on our homepage above the scroll and flip-flop between very prosaic, we do websites and strategy and branding and things, and then very sort of ambitious, change the world, change your marketing. And it goes back and forth. So sometimes you come to our website and it tells you exactly what we do on the tin, and sometimes it tells you a little bit about the outcomes or the ambition. So I'm sitting in a little bit of a glass house throwing stones on this, but it's an interesting test to do. So that's the end of my recommendations, apart from go download the report and get into the details of this. It's really interesting, and Sian and the team have done an amazing job pulling that together. There is another webinar coming up very soon from not me, but my colleague Joanna, who's going to talk about how to write website copy like a UI UX genius. Writing for the web is a constantly challenging thing to do. It takes a lot of expertise. She's run this training for us internally, and I really wanted to get it out into the world. So I'm highly recommending that. We've written, I can see that I've put that UI UX Genius under recent webinars. Sorry, that's a typo. I've been running all kinds of webinars every week or two for the last 6 months. There's some really good stuff there. Go to articulatemarketing.com/webinars and browse and enjoy. There is a filter and a search tool. And lastly, if any of this resonates, please don't hesitate to book up a call or drop me an email. If you have any feedback for me, love to hear from you. And that brings us to the end, and I'm well within time, so I'm brilliant. And I'm going to go and sit in the garden and try and cool down on this stupidly hot Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining. Have a great evening. Bye now.